Hey everyone, this is Ian here. Before we get into today's episode, just a quick update. Cuberviews will be taking a 1 week break as I'll be away for the week. But don't worry, we'll be back soon with more great episodes. So stay tuned and I'll see you all soon. Enjoy today's episode. Hey everyone, welcome to Cuberviews episode 20. This is your host, Ian Braverman. I hope you're having a really nice week so far. Today I am joined by Eric Evans. We're going to be talking about the Peasant Plus Cube. How are you doing today?
I am doing fantastic. How are
Fan-
you?
Fantastic. I'm glad to hear. I'm doing good. I'm doing well. I hear you got some snow near you. We're going to have some snow near me tomorrow.
It is a snowy day here in Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
It's been a snowy winter. Yeah, and introduce yourself.
All right, my name is Eric. I'm currently living in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Love Magic the Gathering. Been playing since I think Darksteel or Fifth Dawn. So I don't want to do the math on that, but it's been a while. Been playing Cube since about 2012 or so. Happy to be here. Happy to talk about one of my favorite things to do.
Awesome. And what are some of your hobbies outside of Cube and what do you do for work?
So for work, I have a very boring desk job in accounts payable. So I basically just answer questions about invoices all day. It's riveting stuff. I'm very happy that it lets me kind of spend my time outside of work doing things I enjoy. When I'm not working or cubing, really into music, both playing in a band here in Milwaukee and just going out and seeing other people perform. So
That's sick. What's your band's name?
band is called Phasing.
What do you play?
I play guitar in that and kind of like indie rockish, emo-ish, and loud.
Sweet. If anyone's in the Milwaukee area, go check out the band. I'm sure they have great performances.
I hope we do. People keep coming back, so we're doing something right.
Hey, that's great. That's great. And we actually met at CubeCon 2022 when I had my Peasant Cube in the event and you
Hmm.
had your Peasant Plus Cube in the event. And we had some discourse about it. And I'm excited to discuss Peasant Cube again with you today.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And just one quick thing I always say at the beginning of the episode, if you happen to be in the area in Connecticut, around the Hartford area, come join us. We cube every week at Games IRL in Avon, Connecticut. Come join us. Yeah, so tell me about the Peasant Plus Cube. What is the difference between a Peasant Cube and a Plus Peasant Cube?
All right. So the Peasant Plus cube follows peasant restrictions. So peasant cubing, for those who do not know, is commons and uncommons only. So in a normal peasant cube, you wouldn't find any card that has only been printed as a rare. So any card, as long as it has a printing at a common or uncommon level, it's considered for peasant legality. What the Peasant Plus does is it makes an exception for mana fixing lands. So while most peasant cubes, your mana fixing is going to be things like the Alara Trilands and Khans of Tarkir Trilands, the myriad of come into play tapped and do a set related mechanic or something like that when they come in. Those are typically the type of the lands that you have in a peasant environment. Notably, most of them come into play tapped. Is there even an untapped set anymore
I think there's
of duels?
one. I think it's the
Yeah, I think there's.
Shadows over Innistrad dual lands that you
Oh
can
yeah,
reveal a land from your hand that were only
yeah. Those
uncommon
are.
on Magic Arena.
Yeah, and that kind of gets into another weird thing too, because yeah, those are only on Arena. They have uncommon printings. There's some people who will use Magic Online and Arena rarities for considering that. So anyway, so what Peasant Plus does is it takes the idea of, we're going to use only commons and uncommons for our non-land cards, but for our lands, we're going to dip into some rares. So my cube features 4 cycles of lands. We have 10 fetch lands, 10 shock lands, 10 check lands from M10, like the Glacial Fortress cycle, and then 10 surveil lands. And what that allows you to do is it gives you a bunch of untapped mana that you can find fairly easily. And it allows your to kind of play on curve a little bit more. Peasant typically plays like a little bit behind the curve because all your lands come into play tapped. So by having access to like the fetches and the shocks and all that, it allows you to play on curve. I like really what it does for aggro a lot.
I have been curating a peasant cube for many years. It was my first cube that I built. I think I started in 2016. I was in my friend's basement and
Mhm.
we just had a lot of uncommons at his house and commons. We just threw a cube together. It's grown a lot since then, foiling it out and everything. But I totally agree with your analysis. Peasant cube can be really powerful. I mean, a pauper cube can be really powerful, but when you add uncommons, you get all the really strong signpost uncommons. You get really strong power outliers and big effects that we're going to be talking about later in this episode. For example, at common, hopper cubes, you don't really get board wipes, but a peasant cube, you get some, especially with some downshifts that we've gotten in recent years. And like you said, really strong cards at uncommon and common, but the lands don't follow suit. So being able to get rare lands gives you, I think, some really nice benefits. They allow you to, especially with fetch lands, expand past two colors much easier. In a normal peasant cube, you have all these duals that are tapped, and when you try and go into three colors and you play 10 duels, 12 duels, you're really behind, especially if you play against aggro. And speaking of aggro, like you said, it allows aggro to shine, like allowing you to have better fixing and not being forced to play enters tap dual lands. It allows you to play sometimes even more than two color aggro decks, which I think is really fun. Go
Mhm.
red, white, splash green, or splash black, or which is really cool. And then also the surveil lands, they are especially strong, as I think many people have seen in Cube. They power up graveyard strategies, allowing you to turn one, bin a Archfiend of Sorrows or something really
Mhm.
strong, and
Yeah,
then
exactly.
reanimate at turn two. And also, Peasant Cube is really high power, like we said. It can be really strong. So A plus B combos, for example, in my cube, I know in yours, we'll get into it, not really
Mhm.
having two card combos, but allowing you to have really powerful fixing to go along with your strong cards.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that it, especially kind of with the combination of the rare lands, I think for my cube especially, it kind of sits in a really unique area where your land bases feel like a more higher powered cube, but the threats you're playing provide a really unique gameplay experience.
Yeah, I totally agree. Tell me about the inspiration behind having rare lands in the cube. Why did you want to have rare lands?
So I originally started this cube in 2012. I remember we were at like GP Chicago. I think it was 2012, might have been 11. It was the one at Navy Pier. So we had a cube like that someone had found a list for, and eventually I changed it at some point into a one for one copy of Eric Klug's Common Uncommon cube. So Eric Klug, the famous altarist for Magic who does all of the beautiful paintings on cards, also has
He's
a
an
really
amazing
really
altar.
absolutely, like, one of these days love to own something by him. Currently not in the budget now, but sidetrack, did you see the displacer kitten that he just like posted like a couple days ago?
No, I didn't.
It was like the Cheshire Cat from Alice in Wonderland, and it is
Oh,
like it's so incredible. And the last I saw the auction was like $3,000. So
wow, that's amazing.
yeah, so I, as much as I would love to have that for my commander deck, we will not be having it. Anyways, back on topic to Peasant Cube. So Eric's got a copy of a Peasant Cube, and this is kind of as I was just kind of getting into cubing. So I made a one for one copy of it, and then basically whenever Eric changed a card, I changed a card. And that's kind of how I started getting comfortable with designing. Eventually got to the point where when a set would come out, I would try to anticipate what the changes would be and then come up with my reasoning for it. And then either all of our changes matched and that was cool. Or sometimes, there'd be a card that would put in. I'd be like, I don't understand why you're making this choice or why you're not doing that. So then that's kind of how they started deviating. That was probably like 2015 is when I started curating like my own list. It's been a 360 cube. It's been a 540 cube. It used to be all foil. Now it's not. It used to have a lot of sign cards. Now it doesn't.
And when did you decide to add rare lands?
So I added rare lands in roughly 2020 ish, I think is when the changeover happened. The cube was at 540. I kind of made the decision to unfoil it at the time, and then I made a bunch of changes as well. And it was at that point that it felt like a good time to kind of overhaul everything. So instead of like cutting 180 cards down to 360, I basically rebuilt it from the ground up, which I encourage a lot of people. If you're ever like stuck with your cube, I think that's a good exercise is to rebuild it from the ground up rather than cutting cards because in that way you're not like married to past decisions you made, and you might end up building your cube in an entirely different way that you like more.
That's great advice.
So what I had done is I had done that, rebuilt it as the 360 with a couple sets of rare lands. Originally, it didn't have fetches in it. It started out with the M10 lands have always been in there, and then I think there was like two random mismatched cycles. So like the red black deck had Black Cleave Cliffs, but blue white had like a temple because blue white wants to play a little bit slower and they're fine with the scry one. So the reason I cut it is because I didn't have a large enough play group to really support an 8 player draft at that time. So by cutting it down to a 360, it kind of helps tighten the list up a little bit because we'd only have 6 people at most. And when you have a 540 cube, it's really hard to have a bunch of synergies in your cube. So like somebody would like try to draft the persist combo and they'd never see the goblin bombardment or something like that. With a 540, you're not guaranteed it, but it's at least more likely. With it being cut down, it really allowed it to focus up, and then the lands just kind of helped increase the gameplay a little bit and address some of the issues. I had been off of the gain life lands for a while because I didn't like what they did for the aggro matchup, and this was just kind of a continuation of that.
Very cool. Yeah, I mean, that sounds like a really cool journey. I totally agree with you. My Peasant Cube, I actually kind of rebuilt it a couple times too. Since
Mm-hmm.
I've had it for so long, at one point I said I'm gonna make it as powerful as I want, and I'm just gonna add Soul Ring and Skull Clamp and the top cards. And then I said this is dumb, and I rebuilt it with like lower power, and then I slowly added more cards back into it. So I think that that's a great strategy. I've definitely had multiple times when I've been building cubes before that I said I don't really know what this cube is anymore.
Mm.
And instead of just like staring at the box and getting confused, restarting it is a great strategy. I think that's a
Yeah.
great thing that people should do.
You had Skull Clamp at CubeCon, right?
Yeah.
I feel like that was in the CubeCon list. I remember that was the card where it was just like, I need to meet this guy
Hey, Skull
because
Clamp was great because it made Black White Aristocrats really good.
it for sure did.
It's no longer in the cube, sadly,
Yep.
but it was great. It was really
Mhm.
fun, at least for one person.
Yeah.
And tell me about the archetypes of this peasant cube. Like from what I've seen, many peasant cubes tend to include a lot of similar archetypes. For example,
Mhm.
my peasant cube and yours both have things like Blink, Reanimator, Aristocrats, counters, tokens. Are there any packages or synergies in your peasant cube that you include to try and set yours apart from other peasant cubes? Like, for example, in mine, I have like an overarching cycling theme.
Yeah, so I don't have any like overarching themes. Typically, I go for more powerful gameplay versus more synergistic. That's kind of the goal. I've been taking a lot of inspiration as of late from like Vintage Cube in terms of just like, here's a bunch of good cards. You're a smart drafter, figure it out. That doesn't inherently lead to some synergy. So, like, Soul Herder is in this cube, Ephemerate's a very powerful card. So, those do lend themselves to kind of in like Azorius Blink strategy. But I'm trying to like not have it be as on rails archetype wise as like a retail limited would be, where like it's very clear what like the red green deck does. I try to have like two strategies that are kind of mainly highlighted in each color. So like Azorius has like a blink sub theme and a control sub theme. But like if you get a bunch of white aggro cards and you want to have remand in your deck, I'm not going to stop you from attacking. Demir has reanimation ideas and control themes. It's got a bunch of really nice board wipes as of late. Rakdos has like an aristocrats type strategy. Gruul, I've been trying out to have a like 4 power plus sub theme with like Surak the Hunt Caller and other things like that. I don't know if I fully like it, but I like encouraging people to cast Charging Monster Sword.
I love that card.
It's so good. If it is in my opening pack, I'm probably going to be a red drafter.
Very
For
nice.
no other reason than I enjoy casting the card. Simic's been the toughest one, I think, to kind of find an identity, and I think it's almost there. I've kind of settled on like a rough like lands-ish theme. It's been a flash deck in the past. It's been kind of like a tempo deck. It's been like a Miracle Grow type thing with Quirion Ranger in the past. It's been all over the place, partially because Wizards can't decide what they want it to be in retail limited. But I think just kind of focusing on just like the general like card advantage plus land strategy has been pretty good for it as of late.
I think that makes a lot of sense. And speaking of downshifts, you mentioned Surak the Hunt Caller, which is a really great card, and also like board wipes. We've gotten some really strong board wipes at uncommon, like Kurtar's Wrath, Extinguish All Hope.
Mhm.
How has the cube changed over time for you with having downshifts? We just got a few more in Innistrad Remastered, which I'm excited for, like Splinter Fright. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so the downshifts, like the master sets, are some of the most exciting ones because basically we get cards we really shouldn't have access to for the purposes of like commander drafting is like the main thing. Like Commander Masters when that came out, I think I added like 13 cards, and that's on the extreme high end of what normally gets added. I think Aether Drift, I'm looking at like 5 cards, which means I'm only probably going to end up keeping like 2.
I'm so excited for Aether Drift and cycling coming back for my cycling team. So
Oh,
good.
yep, that's gonna be really good for that one. Yeah, I'm just looking at like the black artifact and like the shark boy, I think, and that's about it. But yeah, so the downshifts are really nice because it allows us to kind of push the top end power level a little bit in an interesting way that wouldn't normally happen in like a retail setting. So like Gonti was one of my favorite downshifts. Gonti Lord of Luxury. I love it for like the blink deck dipping into black a little bit is really fun because it allows you, I don't know, I love triggering Gonti over and over again.
One of my
Um
favorite downshifts ever, which you don't have in yours, is Phyrexian Ingester. I love that card. I had
yeah,
that one of my first rares when I was a kid, plus X plus Y. It's such a goofy
yeah.
card, but it's
Yeah,
strong.
Phyrexian Ingester was in here for a while. The mana value of it was just a little too high. I have my cube up as I'm looking at this, and I'm kind of realizing exactly how lean the mana values are in a lot of the spell slots. Like most of the curve ends at 4 or 5, with very few 6 drops in there. And part of that is just kind of the more aggressive, fast paced nature of this cube.
One thing that you also mentioned on your cube cover page is by having better fixing, it allows drafters to expand past two color decks. For example, being an aristocrats deck that could be white black splashing red, or being a blink deck that's blue white splashing green. Tell me about
Mhm.
how the fixing has affected what people draft.
At one point with the fixing, it did have triomes in here
Ooh.
over the surveillance. Those felt a little too free in terms of the fixing. You could grab 2 triomes, 2 fetches, and then you could like basically cast anything you wanted in the cube. And that was a little too much on the 5 color soup end. I've been really liking the mix as it is now because if like you can play 3 colors, but you really have to make a conscious decision that that's what you're going to do. But as a result, you can kind of put some really interesting things together. You could do like a Jeskai tokens deck if you wanted, if you got like an early third path iconoclast and Young Pyromancer and decide that you want to kind of take some of the white anthems and mix them with that like blue red spell base. And, depending on how you get your fixing, you can prioritize doing that. You can take like the white blank deck and, bounce Flame Tongue Kavu over and over and over again. And that's really good. You can take some of the reanimator strategies and add that as a sub theme into your like red green monsters deck, for example. So it just kind of allows the player to look at the cards that they want to play and be able to draft them and figure out a way to play them.
Yeah, and I think it goes really nicely hand in hand with what you were saying about not really focusing as much on archetypes and trying to be not so on rails. If
Mm-hmm.
players can go three colors and they can expand past what some of the two color signpost cards might say and really become more emergent in their drafting, which I think is really
Mm-hmm.
cool. And tell me about the power level of this peasant cube. Peasant cubes are interesting because unlike for popper cubes, I mean, there are some really strong popper cards, like only commons, but Peasant, it feels like popper, but with some really strong uncommon power outliers. And
Mm-hmm.
there are definitely some really strong uncommons that some peasant cubes include and some don't. Like I mentioned, I had Soul Ring in it, I had Skull Clamp, I had Mana Drain at one point, and you definitely have some cards that I would consider to be more power outliers. For example, Mother of Runes. I had that in my cube for years. I got a sick old border foil that I spent too much money on.
Mm-hmm.
And then I said, after a long time of having the cube and people complaining, I said, this card's a little too strong. Now that sick foil is in my Bant cube, so it still gets played, but that reanimate, really powerful 1 mana reanimation is really good.
Mm-hmm.
Sylvan Library. I think that over the years, Sylvan Library is not as good as it used to be. I don't know if that's a hot take. It's just Magic's gotten so much more efficient and
I
tempo and
I think I would put that take in my lemonade on a summer day. I
okay,
think it's a cold take now.
a cool take. Okay. And then like demonic tutor,
Yep.
really powerful, but of course demonic tutor gets more powerful the cards you can tutor with it. And then strip mine, wasteland. I don't go near strip mine with a 10-foot pole in Peasant Cube, but I do have wasteland, even if I might be a little too strong with having bounce lands in mine.
Yep. Yeah, every time someone looks at my cube and says like strip mine seems kind of questionable, I just remind people that the bounce lands used to be in this cube and that strip mine was also in the cube at the same time.
I loved having strip mine. I used to have it. I had an
Yep.
expedition. It was cool.
Yeah, it was always really fun when you got to find a way to put strip mine into play while they had the bounce trigger on the stack, so then they had to still return a land.
Oh, nasty. That's even nastier.
Yep, yeah, I'm not claiming it that to be like good gameplay, but it was something you could do.
Yeah. And tell me
Um,
about some of these power outliers then.
yeah, so like I've always enjoyed high power gameplay. Some of my issue with like some of like the lower power level cubes, it just kind of feels like you're fighting with wet spaghetti. My goal in designing this cube is that I kind of wanted it to feel like the vintage cube of peasant cubes, where we're playing with like the best of the best. We have some of the strongest cards within the peasant legality that we can have access to, and then how can we make those work? Recently, they had the no holds barred cube on Magic Online, and that actually was pretty important for me to just kind of reassess my evaluation of this cube. Talk of the town, everyone knows her by her name, Gut. That card recently got cut from my cube, and it was a card that I was a strong defender of for a long, 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 long time. One of the arguments that I had used is like players are allowed to have good cards, and like Vintage Cube has Black Lotus. This is my Black Lotus. After kind of seeing some of the gameplay from the No Holds Barred cube, I realized that I think Gut is more of a time vault than a Black Lotus, in that when the card is not in play, the gameplay is still all about it. You don't really make decisions other than deciding to draft it, and then you just make the best deck you can with it, and it leads to actually less interesting gameplay than kind of what I had thought. It took a lot of people telling me that, but I finally listened.
I think the first couple cube cons were funny because so many cubes included gut when it first
Yeah.
came out. And then the next year, people were like, I'm still holding on to it. And then I think this year, people were, or 2024, people were like, no more.
You could pack one, pick one it in the 2024 version of my cube. I think half the 3.0 decks at CubeCon were black red gut decks of some sort. But yeah, so like there's very powerful cards like Mother of Runes, there's Demonic Tutor. You can cycle your Oliphant and reanimate it turn two if you want. All the Lord of the Rings cyclers are in here. So you can do that, but there's very cheap counterspell interaction to tag the reanimate. There's a lot of really efficient removal in like black and red and white where you can tag them other runes or force them to like 2-for-1 themselves in order to get rid of it. You know, Demonic Tutor is as good as you're finding, but it also costs you time to cast the card. And sometimes you don't have time to spend 2 mana to go find whatever you're looking for. Some of these decks get really, really efficient, and you don't always have time for that. The original list that Eric Cook had banned was Mana Drain, Soul Ring, Skull Clamp, and Library of Alexandria. I've adhered to that pretty well. I've seen people put like Loxodon on Warhammer. I've seen people like call that too good. I've seen people call Grafted War Gear too good. Sylvan Library, I just like don't think is
I don't even know if it's
it.
good anymore.
I wouldn't go that far. Like it's a good card. I think it's a reasonable pick. I don't think you have to take it if you open it in your pack. You know, I think a card like Curse of Predation is much stronger in green, especially in my
Oh, that's a
cube.
card. Oh my gosh.
You know, but like there's a lot of them and they're isolated in like a lot of different colors. So and they all encourage you to do different things. So I like that there's a lot of kind of powerful tent poles holding it up, but there's still a lot that you can do within that as well. So
Definitely. And then you don't include a few of the most powerful cards, like you said, Mana
mhm.
Drain, Channel, Skull Clamp. Have you considered adding those?
Mana Drain was on the consider list for a while. Channel and Skull Clamp, I think like the games just aren't as interesting when they're in play. Skull Clamp is a very fun card if you're the Skull Clamp player, and it's a very unfun card if you're not the Skull Clamp player.
Yeah,
And especially with the amount of tokens that are in here, like if I get Skull Clamp and like Jade Mage, I'm having a great time, and I don't know that that game is going to actually be a very interesting one for the players involved. You know, The Skull Clamp player probably just like draws a bunch of cards and wins the game, and the person who doesn't have that just kind of sits there wishing they had better cards.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
So, and that's kind of where Gut was a little bit too. It was just like I play the card, I do the thing, I win, and then the other player just kind of has to like sit there and watch it happen. Whereas at least with like Mother of Runes, like there's strategies where like, okay, I'm gonna attack. You have to decide if you're going to like block and give protection. Then you have to figure out like, do I have the removal spell? Am I baiting you into doing this? Or, there's at least a counterplay to that exists. Whereas like with something like Skull Clamp and Channel, there really isn't.
I mean, I asked Channel, but I hate that card. That's one of my least favorite cards ever.
Yeah, I there's also just like a lot of the stuff in here is like very pip heavy. The cheaper stuff, like a lot of stuff, like all the green cards. Like green has probably the most amount of like double green pips, which channel doesn't really help you out much with.
Hey, Channel Artisan of Kozilek. There you go.
Don't tempt me with a good time.
Get out that Annihilator real quick. What does your opponent do?
Probably losing value on that cast trigger though. I don't know if I can leave that much value on the table.
True, true. We'll have to stay with Ulamog's Crusher
Yeah,
then.
but like those are really like the only payoffs for the channel deck, and I don't know if that's like that interesting.
Yeah,
I
I
I guess
totally.
like windmill slamming meteor golems like pretty good, but
And speaking of power outliers, what do you think are some of the most important balance techniques for a peasant cube? Like I've played many peasant cubes, my own many times, and like we mentioned, there are some really powerful rare downshifts that I think have caused some archetypes to become especially powerful. Like at CubeCon 2023 in the top 64, I played Emma Partlow's peasant cube,
mhm,
and I played against a Rakdos Aristocrats deck, and oh my gosh, I had no chance to get to that deck. They had Gut, Judith, Aristocrats effects. I was dying like turn four. It was ridiculous. And then also like Blink can be so powerful now.
mhm,
Ephemerate, Palace Jailer, Mentor the Meek, another downshift. I don't know if that's as strong as like dying a gut turn three, but there's some really strong archetypes that can go
mhm.
into Peasant Cube now.
So one thing with Peasant Cube and Power Outliers, like there are a lot of powerful cards. You got like Palace Jailer, Ephemerate, Mayhem Devil. I'll even throw Flame Tongue Kavu in there. Like that card's still good all these years later. We've got things like Gonti being downshifted. We've got a bunch of powerful blue cards. We've got Force of Will. All these powerful cards. But one of the things that's very nice about that is that they're very spread across different archetypes. It's not like the Rakdos deck wants every single card that I just mentioned. Like they want nothing to do with the Force of Will. The Force of Will decks, they don't want anything to really do with Mayhem Devil. So there's a lot of powerful cards, but they get spread around the cube in a nice even way. And then the other thing we can do is we can be kind of conscious on the gold slots because like generally speaking, those are going to be the ones that are going to be utilized the most in individual archetypes. So by being conscious of what we're putting in those gold slots, we can kind of power balance decks like that. So, like my Rakdos section in my cube, I have Blood Tithe Harvester, I have Fireglass Mentor, which is a really cool Bloomborough card. I've got Jury, Master of the Review, Mayhem Devil, and Murderous Red Cap. And all of these cards, like they all can go in like a black red, like Sacrifice Aristocrats deck. Some of them, Fireglass Mentor would be kind of cool in like a green deck as well if you were to like splash one of the colors for it. Blood Tithe Harvester making blood tokens can kind of go in like a more controlling like white black deck. Maybe they want to splash red for that. Maybe you're just more of a black red kind of removal based deck. I try to have all the cards be good in like more than one situation. And it all kind of ties back to the player kind of being able to draft whatever they want. They can go through, look at the cards that they want, and just kind of assemble a strategy in whatever way they see fit.
Yeah, absolutely. And one question that I have for you is, have you ever considered adding rares to the cube outside of lands? Like I've seen a lot of discourse online about different cube curators saying, "Oh, what is the point of Peasant Cube? Why not just add rares to it? Why not?" But you keep your list outside of the lands, totally commons and uncommons. Is this for aesthetic reasons or restriction breeds creativity or like the hook of the cube explaining to people it's a peasant cube, but with rare lands? Tell me why you've decided to not add rares.
Well, part of it is just like I grew up playing like straight peasant for so many years. Like that's just a lane that I'm very comfortable in terms of magic. Had Eric's Cube for many years as the copy of that, and then I kind of made it my own. Met a lot of people through Peasant Cube. And I feel like it's something that I've kind of grown to understand a little bit. So it's definitely something that's just within my wheelhouse of Magic. There's a certain appeal to it where, when you have like a porcelain legionnaire attacking with a grafted war gear on it, that like doesn't happen in other formats of Magic, really. I have my cube in front of me and I'm just like picking up random cards now. Like, name another format where Citizen's Crowbar is a card that you want to draft, or where Mana Tithe is like really good because you're getting rid of like a Lightning Helix or something like that with a Mana Tithe. Like, that type of gameplay doesn't happen in other formats outside of Peasant Cube. So there's a certain nostalgia to a lot of the cards. Having Muldrifter be an all-star card is, any cube where that can happen is a good thing. But especially in a Peasant cube where those type of cards are very good. A lot of kind of the bread and butter cards of a lot of like constructed decks end up in the Peasant environment. And it's kind of fun to just kind of jam all of them together, along with like some, the more powerful like draft cards. Insidious Roots was like a really cool card in like Markov Manor Draft. You can do some really cool things in this cube with that. It's powerful, but like when you start adding like fairly powerful rares in, it muddies it a little bit to the point where like a lot of those cards don't become as playable. And I just like playing with those cards. This is what it really comes down to.
Yeah, I was really surprised at CubeCon when I had my peasant cube in there. How
Mm-hmm.
many people, when I asked them, "Oh, how did you like the peasant cube?" or "Why did you decide to do my cube?" How many people just said, "You know, I love limited and I like lower power formats, and so I always try and do a peasant cube or a pauper cube." For some people, that's just a part of cube that they really love. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I am a longtime limited player. I just did Aether Drift pre-release the other week and also doing draft. And Peasant Cube is really nice because it feels like free draft. Sure,
Mm-hmm.
there's no rares, but there are like the rare downshifts or the power outliers we talked about, which feel like the
Mm-hmm.
rares.
Yeah. One thing that you had mentioned is like people kind of like the lower power environment of it, which can be true of some. I kind of like the expectations subversion that my cube kind of provides in that, where it seems like it should be lower power level when you describe it as commons and uncommons only, but then you kind of remember like what some cards have been printed at common and uncommon, and kind of showing people like, yeah, these cards can still be incredible, these cards can still be really powerful, and these cards can still be really fun too.
Yeah, one of my favorite things that happens when I do my Peasant Cube is just how often people say, "This is an uncommon." What?
Mm-hmm.
That happens all the time.
I really need to put a tip jar out where you have to pay $1 to say that. Some fun new sleeves, at least for the cube.
Yeah. Whenever somebody says, "This is an uncommon," show me the rarity, show me the Scryfall.
Mm-hmm. You got to pay $2 if you shout, "Why is this still here?"
Definitely. And another question that I have for you is this cube is higher power for a peasant cube, but there are no two card combos.
Correct.
What is the reason for not including them? I mean, for example, one question I have for you is you have Rosie Con, which is a fantastic counters and token payoff, but
Mm-hmm.
no Scurry Oak. And
Correct.
those, or Herd Baloth.
Yep.
And tell me about why there's no two card combos.
So if I'm the player who has the two card combo, like I don't think that there's an expectation that two card combos exist in Peasant. So like if I sat down not knowing the cube list, I wouldn't expect combo to be a thing you could do, realistically speaking. So to kind of have a gameplay end in like a two card combo, I feel like for some players that can kind of like ruin the experience a little bit. With the presence of things like demonic tutor and other ways to kind of filter and search your deck, I don't like how quick some of those games can end, where it kind of makes it about like assembling your thing rather than like fully doing your deck's like strategy. Also, it's just like harder to interact with because there's less pieces. With like the Skuriok Rosy Cotton, like it's still a two-card creature combo, so you can still like interact with removal. But like with the three-card combos, there's a lot more moving parts involved, and it's in theory easier to interact with.
Yeah, it's a lot harder to interact with like Thopter Sword combo.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I
Oh god, that's
remember,
Peasant, isn't it?
yeah. When
Oh
I
geez.
remember when I had my Peasant Cube, like an older version years ago, one of my friends, Hunter, he drafted Vizier Devoted Druid. He had Thopter Sword. He had like four combos in one deck. And I think he went 2-1, but it was just crazy. I love seeing decks like that that are just all combos and just weirdo decks that doesn't do really anything until you get those pieces together. But I totally get what you're saying that
Mhm.
it can subvert expectations, especially those people who might come into it and say, "Hey, this is a peasant cube. I'm looking for a more limited like experience." Dying turn three to Rosie Khan or devoted Druid Vizier, that might be out of their expectations.
Mhm. Yeah, and so like the reason Rosie stayed is because I think Rosie is the more interesting card for my cube. When I made the decision that I wanted to cut that combo, it was like, okay, are we going to keep the green card and kind of go with the counters theme, or Rosie and go with the more tokens? And it felt like there was more token support, so I felt like just Rosie was better.
I can totally see that. Makes sense.
So the one combo that I'm kind of looking at is just kind of like a back of the eye watch list. It's a 3 card enchantment based combo, which is Tortured Existence, Insidious Roots, and Fires of Yavimaya. You also like need creature cards to discard, but it allows you to discard a creature to pick up a creature. Since you had a creature leave your graveyard, Insidious Roots makes a plant token. Fires gives it haste, so it can tap for mana. So you get infinite tapped plants. You have to pass the turn because all your plants are tapped, but like you can just like do that on someone's end step. And I don't know if like that's too good, but like there's like 4 or 5 cards involved.
That's interesting. I never even thought about that combo. And now I
I
really want
didn't
to go Jund combo in your cube with persist combo and that. I want to
Yeah,
go
so
all
I
in.
didn't know that combo existed until Sunday of CubeCon last year. And one of my friends drafted it, and I did that scene in like the movies where like the person sees all like the math come together in their mind. So like that just like occurred to me, and it's just like, oh my god, that exists.
What do I do?
Um,
It's too late. The list's locked in.
well, this was like after everybody had drafted. This was like after top 8 draft. This is just like Sunday as we were just kind of hanging out in the convention center.
Wow.
But yeah, so that's kind of like on the watch list in terms of combo, just because enchantments are like kind of hard to interact with. But I don't know. It's a 450 card cube. What are the odds someone does it? And if they do it, congratulations, I
I
guess.
think that combo is cool. I think most people would not have thought of that combo. I didn't think of it.
Yeah.
Insidious
So,
Roots is really cool. So
and that's kind of one of the nice things that happens when you just like let people draft cards is they find things like that.
yeah, definitely. And let's jump into a pack one, pick one of the cube here.
Pack
We
one, pick
got,
one, you say.
yeah. You want to read it off?
All right. So for this pack one, pick one, we have Sifter Worm, which is a 7 mana 7/7 green creature. It's got trample. You scry 3, reveal the top card of your deck when it comes into play, and you gain life equal to that card's converted mana cost. Very powerful reanimation card. We have Watery Grave. We have Corsication Mage, which is a gutter snipe effect from Bloomburl. It's a wonderfully cute otter wizard. We have Tatiova Benthic Druid, 3 and a Simic for a 3/3 with landfall, and you gain a life and draw a card. We have Elves of Deep Shadow, a classic. We have Reanimate, another classic. Ooh, this is a good pack. We have Cloud Blazer, which is 3 and an Azorius for a 2/2 flyer. When it comes into play, you draw 2 cards and you gain 2 life. We have a Windswept Heath. We have a Hive Spine Wolverine, which is a 5 mana 5/4. When it enters the battlefield, you either put a 1/1 counter on a creature you control, you fight a token, or you disenchant. We have one of the rooms from Duskmorn. We have Painter Studio and Defaced Gallery. I need to turn my head to read this. When you unlock this door, exile the top card of your library. You can play one of them, or your attacking creature get +1/+0. We have Wormcoil Larva, which is like a little mini Wormcoil engine. We have Soul Herder, which is 1 in Azorius for a 1/1. Whenever a creature gets exiled, put a 1/1 counter on it, and then you get to flicker a thing at the end step. We have Accursed Marauder, which is a 2 mana 2/1 ETBs. Each player sacrifices a creature. We have Brimstone Volley, which is a lightning bolt variant for 3 mana, but if a creature died, you deal 5 damage. And then we have Battle Screech. 2 and 2 white, you put 2/1/1 bird tokens into play, and then you can flash it back by tapping 3 untapped white creatures you control.
This pack slaps.
This pack, I'm going to keep it PG and say this is a banger.
Yeah, this pack's a banger, 100%. What are you
Oh,
thinking
man.
here?
Well, there's a lot of cards that I want to take here. So I know a lot of people in Peasant Cube would be very drawn to Soul Herder, a very
Uh-huh.
powerful blue-white card.
That's what I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm. I also see that Cloud Blazer, which is one of its payoff cards, is also in the pack. I don't know if this is correct in drafting. I don't feel like solving the blue-white problem here. So I like thinking about signaling a lot. So if I take Soul Herder and then I pass Cloud Blazer, am I going to maybe push someone a couple seats to my left into blue white? Because there's not really other blue and white cards in here. So As those kind of get passed, I would basically want to commit to taking them to not signal that blue and white's open. And I don't really want to fight over that. So my inclination is just to like let the person to my left figure out who the blue white drafter is and take something else. I don't know if this is correct, but this is how I would approach this. I'm looking at Tatiova as a very, very strong payoff for green. I'm looking at Reanimate, which is a very powerful black card. I also like don't think a Cursed Marauder and Wormcoil Lava are strong enough to push people into black. Battle Screech is like one of the best white token makers that is in the cube, especially because you only really need one other white creature because you can just tap the 2 tokens you make and one other white creature, and you can make 4 creatures on one turn. There's always just the take a fetch and eat your vegetables. I think I'm taking Reanimate.
I think that makes a lot of sense based off your logic. There's not a lot of good reanimation cards in here. I mean, there's Watery Grave, Wormcoil Lava, but you're not pushing people into a direction. That sounds like the smart choice, but for me, I can't resist Blink. Come on, what do you? I see Soul Herder and I take it. Plus, there's so many good cards I could wheel. There's Windswept
Mm-hmm.
Teeth, Hivespine Wolverine, Cloud Blazer, Tatiova, one of my favorite limited cards of all time. I gotta take Soul Herder. Come on, what do
Yeah,
people
I
expect?
think I think that's super respectable. I'm kind of eyeing the Sifter Worm as a reanimate target.
Or I'm lying as a Blink target.
Ooh, that is not a card I would. I don't know if I've ever seen that blinked, and now I really want to see that.
Scry 3 gains some life. How do you lose? You're gaining like 3 life a turn. Come on.
It's so good.
Very cool. Well, that was a very good pack one pick one here. And Eric, it's been awesome having you on the show.
Yeah, this has been super fun. I really enjoyed chatting about Peasant Cube.
Anything you want to say before we wrap up here?
Just want to say thank you for having me on here again. As I said earlier, I'm in the Milwaukee area. I help a local store called the Mana Vault, which we do 2 cube events a year. I help judge them. So we do the Ice Cube in kind of January, February time. And then coming up this summer, we haven't announced dates yet, but we will have the second barbecue coming up. So if you're in the southern Wisconsin area and you feel like cube drafting, come on over, come say hi. Love to see you.
I love that name, the barbecue. That's such a good name.
Last year, we gave out grill spatulas that were engraved to the top 8.
Wow, that's awesome.
And then for the ice cube, the first year they did ice cube trays that had their store logo in them for
Wow,
like giant like whiskey ice. And then this year we did snow globes.
that's sick. I'm excited to
Yeah.
hear what you guys do
So
next year or this year.
yeah, I don't know what it's gonna be, but I know it's gonna be some fun novelty gift that people are gonna get way too competitive about.
Yes.
But it's for fun things like that. So
Yeah, and Eric, thanks for coming on. Would love to
yeah,
have you on again in the future at some point.
thank you so much for having me. I'll have to cook up a new project so I can come here and yap about that for a bit.
Sounds great. And everyone, please like, subscribe, follow, all that fun stuff. Give 5 stars. And we'll see you all next week. Have a great night.
Bye everyone.